Hello everybody, my name is Eddie Falcon, and I was in the United States Air Force and I was an air crew member. I went on 4 deployments, 2 to Iraq, 2 to Afghanistan, and did medical evacuations in Hurricane Katrina. And today I'm going to be talking to you about racism and discrimination in the military. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, I am of Mexican descent. My mother and father are both Mexican. My mother was born in Mexico, and I joined the military for economic reasons. I wanted to get money for school. I wanted to, have a job. I didn't feel like I could, support myself through college, and my family couldn't afford it. And I also wanted to escape this cycle of violence. There was gangs, there was drugs, and I even had to spend some time in foster care because of violence in my own home growing up. And so I wanted to escape those things and poverty and things like that. And so that is what's called the economic draft. So maybe you have heard of the draft, but the economic draft is when you're pushed into the military for economic reasons. And the draft is something that you might remember in your history class about Vietnam, and it was when people were selected to go to the military, not voluntarily. And a famous person that you might know, Muhammad Ali, heavyweight champion boxer, he resisted going to the military because he was a conscientious objector, and which means his conscience objected to fighting in the war for religious reasons. Now, I did join the Air Force. And the reasons why I joined the Air Force is because I wanted to fly, I wanted to see the world, and I did get to do that. I did get to fly. I got to see a lot of countries. This is my flight helmet that I wore at work. And I did get money from school, but I got to experience things that I didn't like in the military and that I didn't go in for. And what we're here to talk about, racism and discrimination. So starting off, I went to boot camp, which is a pretty diverse place. There's a lot of people from all over the country, blacks, whites, Asians, Latinos. But as I went further along towards my job, through tech school, through flight school, and getting to my duty station, it got less and less diverse. And the reason for that is because in the military, the more elite type of job that you want, like a Navy SEAL, or maybe pararescue or something like that, or the more technical a job is like air crew, it gets less diverse as you go on. And even where I was stationed at was Little Rock, Arkansas, and so I experienced something called culture shock. I was away from my element. I'm Mexican from California, and there was only blacks and whites really that were in Little Rock, Arkansas. I didn't see hardly any Latino people there, or any other race, for example. And even on base, I remember when I was in flight school, which was also at Little Rock, I met somebody there who was telling me that he had never even seen a black person before he joined the military. And so these are the type of people that you might have to deal with, and they might not know how to deal with you, if you're different, if you're a person of color. And so when I got to my squadron, I was the only Mexican there. And because of that, everybody else was a white male, except for a couple officers. We had a black officer, and we had one Latino officer, but you're not supposed to what's called fraternize with the officers. You're not supposed to hang out with them. Fraternize is another word for brotherhood, basically. You're not supposed to make brotherhood with them. Even though the military promotes brotherhood, they also are telling you not to do that. What happened with me was I experienced some pretty harsh racism and some soft racism. So the harsh racism came from the other airmen, the other soldiers. For example, I had the fastest run time in my squadron at one point for physical training, and they would say, well, the reason why you run so fast is because you're a beaner and you guys have to jump borders, and so it's in your blood because you're a spick. And they would call me names like that all the time. and it was pretty hurtful, and I ended up becoming pretty isolated and alone and feeling like I had no friends because of that. And I think it's okay, you know, to joke with your friends when you're doing competitive things, but not like that. You know, even just playing video games, they would be like, "Oh, shut up, Spick," or something if I was, you know, talking, and it just felt it felt very wrong and very hurtful. And the soft racism that I experienced, that I was talking about, was from the officers. So what is an officer, first of all? An officer in the military is somebody who has a college education and then joined the military. So they have a bachelor's degree at least. And they're the people that would fly the planes. They were the pilots and navigators. But I experienced racism from them as well. And I call it soft because it was different. You know, for example, one time they were talking about a play, and I happened to know the play. I had read it before, and I was quoting lines from the play, and they said, "Oh, Airman Falcon, I'm very surprised that you know about that play." And one time I was listening to some music, and they asked me what I was listening to, and it was this indie rock band, and one of them said, "Oh, I'm surprised that you know that band." And you know, that's racism too, because they were surprised that me being Mexican would know about things that they read about in college or know about the type of music that white people listen to. So I also experienced, you know, racism kind of secondhand in the war and in Hurricane Katrina. You know, everybody pretty much would say racist slurs towards the Arab people in Iraq, and they would, for example, in the chow hall we had products like Mountain Dew or Coca-Cola, but because they were written in Arabic, they would say, "Oh, let me get a Haji Dew or a Haji Cola," and that's an insensitive racist term to use in that manner. And also, you know, when we would this pivotal moment happened when I was at war, where we were moving prisoners from prisons in Iraq and either to the prison or out of the prison, just shuffling people around, and we had to blindfold them. But when I released them, I would take the blindfold off of them and release them back to the population in Baghdad. And when I did that, when I took the blindfold off, you know, the Iraqi prisoners would look at me and think that I was Arab, and they would try to speak to me in Arabic, and you know, I didn't know any, and then so they figured out that I was American, and then they would be, you know, scared and, you know, get away from me. And so that, and then also when Hurricane Katrina was happening, we'd be in the chow hall watching the news, and news was calling the black people who were left behind looters that were looking for resources to survive. And the other soldiers agreed with that and would say, like, "Look at these dirty N-words, and they're stealing things when other people are just trying to survive, you know." And they didn't understand that they were not looters. They were the people who were trying to survive. So I started identifying with not the other members of my squadron and with the people who were being called racist terms like me. And so that was a very pivotal point for me, and it changed kind of all these things. It changed my outlook on things. And so I want you to be aware of this and know that the military is not free of racism and discrimination. In fact, the military can be a lot more racist, and a lot of these problems that we have in society get compressed and, you know, blow up in the military because of the high stress, being a war, or just the stress of the job, and also people from all over mixing together that, you know, aren't used to each other's culture and each other's ways, and frankly not used to being around people of color. So if you yourself are a person of color, or just different in any way really from the dominating culture of white males, which is historically what the military has been about, you're probably going to experience these things on different levels. And so I want you to be aware of this before you sign the paperwork before, you know, if you have any type of influence at all over what type of job you're going to get, what duty station you're going to go to. I want you to think about these things. You know, I hope that if you do go, that you aren't alone and isolated and feeling depressed like I was, and that you can make some friends on base or even off base. So keep these things in mind, and I thank you for your time, and have a good day.